Hi, my name is Amy Din. I'm the litigation director of the Lone Star Legal Aid's Environmental Justice Project. We are so happy to have you join us today for Friday's Law Talk. And on Earth Day, we have a special environmental presentation for you, specifically on illegal dumping. We're going to be talking today with one of our group client representatives, Huey German Wilson of Super Neighborhood 48. Trinity Houston Gardens, and also one of our interns that's been working with our team of attorneys this semester. He's a law student at U of H. His name is Ryan Cooper. So I want to welcome Ryan and Huey to the conversation today, and so glad that all of y'all could join us as we get ready to celebrate Earth Day. Huey, you want to take a minute and just introduce yourself to our audience?
Good afternoon. I am, Amy, you stole my thunder. I'm Huey German Wilson, president of Super Neighborhood 48, Trinity Houston Gardens. And I am a lifelong resident of Northeast Houston. And I've volunteered or advocated for the community for probably the last 35 or 40 years.
Thanks, Huey. We're so glad to have a partnership with your organization, and you individually been so instrumental in helping move this work forward. Super excited you can join us today. Ryan, do you want to do a quick introduction for us?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Ryan Cooper, and I'm a law student at the University of Houston Law Center. I've focused in mostly on environmental law and litigation, and this project is one that's very near to my heart. Not only have I been working on it over the course of this semester, but I also did an entire paper on it. So I was very glad to be a part of the team and be involved in this whole process and get shuttled around with the Department of Justice at various points. It was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it.
Well, exciting. We can't wait to hear more about that, Ryan. So today's conversation is going to focus on illegal dumping, and our environmental justice project has been very focused on inequities and minority communities, low-income communities throughout the Houston area and the rest of our service area. And this was a particular issue that Super Neighborhood 48 brought to us as a client of a particular concern, and we've been working with them to try to address these issues in their particular neighborhood. So I'm going to start out with Huey today. You mentioned that you're part of a super neighborhood group for your area. Can you talk a little bit more about what part of Houston that your super neighborhood is in, and kind of how your community, you help your community with these various issues?
Sure. So super neighborhoods, ours in particular, the city has about 50 active super neighborhoods, and they are the umbrella organizations for civic clubs, because we don't have a lot of homeowners associations in the city of Houston. And so what we do is work with our various civic clubs and organizations in the community on whatever issues are being brought forward. And it is it has been a tremendous issue for probably the last 10 years or so. And we've never really gotten a clear understanding on why that's so, other than we are north of 610 and east of 59, in that little corner just behind Metro. Trinity Gardens starts off of Hirsch and Kelly. And so we've existed there for years. The community is almost 90 years old, as a matter of fact. And it's a little bedroom community, and there's not a whole lot going on out there. But our illegal dumping would lead you to believe that we have a huge industry, and it's illegal dumping. And so we started doing a lot of the legwork on illegal dumping probably around 2014 or 15, and kept trying to refine how we attacked it. And finally, about 2017, we started to have some traction with it in terms of working with the city and solid waste in particular, but 311 as well, because they take our reporting. So that's where we started. And as a super neighborhood president, it was when we did our spreadsheet on issues that we had for the community that year, that was our #1 issue.
Well, I'm so glad we've been able to highlight that today. And I understand we've kind of got a graphic here for our audience that y'all are in the northeast area of Houston. I think you gave a pretty good description, and we've got a map to reflect exactly the boundaries of your super neighborhood there north of 610. So thanks for that. I want to kind of just drill down a little bit more about what you shared about your illegal dumping problems and how it was a top priority for the community, and kind of why you brought this particular issue to Lone Star Legal Aid, and how kind of we worked together to develop the issues we outlined in the complaint.
Yes. So we started, again, we did a spreadsheet and started identifying big issues in our community, and illegal dumping was one, and safety was another. And, you know, we could go healthcare and food insecurity and all of the things that we were dealing with. But as we struggled to get past Harvey, we realized that we had a larger problem than even I think at that point was when we realized we had more illegal dumping in Northeast Houston in Trinity Houston Gardens than anywhere else in the city. And so that was a wake-up call for us. And again, we had finally gotten some traction with 311 on identifying issues. We worked with 311 on refining their process so that they were getting our information, and then we could pull down reports on how much illegal dumping we had actually identified over the course of any period of time. And then we met with Lone Star Legal Aid to begin with, because we were working on Harvey issues, of which illegal dumping was a big deal because there was so much debris that mingled with our illegal dumping. And so we had to work extra hard with solid waste to make sure we were identifying areas around our communities that, you know, we had debris from Harvey that was as tall as a truck. But we had illegal dumping in the form of 200 or 300 tires in front of a vacant lot. We had medical waste that we would find. And even though we were completing our cleanups, and, you know, cleanups are really litter grabbers, we're out doing delittering, we couldn't allow our volunteers to even pick up some of the stuff that we identified during that process. So 10 or 20 mattresses, we could not have volunteers picking that up. So even though we were working very diligently with solid waste, some of this went beyond the normal dumping that you see in your community, a chair on the corner. We're talking more like 40 or 50 bags of waste that people have pulled out of abandoned buildings. And so those are not things that we can have volunteers pick up and put in a trailer. And so that's where this all just kind of escalated into, we need some additional help to figure out what we can do. And so Lone Star Legal Aid helped us, script that out, write it down, identify. Actually, up until that point, I don't know that we realized we had an environmental issue. We thought illegal dumping was our burden to bear, and we worked with it. And then as we talked to Lone Star Legal Aid and took them on ride-alongs to identify the landfills we have in the community, we also identified that the amount of illegal dumping that we were actually talking about. And again, 200 tires in a ditch, not even on a vacant lot, it was in a ditch, and tires that span 2 or 3 lots. We've identified crazy amounts of illegal dumping, whole houses that people just, if it burned down, they took it and put it on the curb. And that's incredible to believe, but that's the kind of thing that we were wrestling with, that as we talked to Lone Star Legal Aid, we were able to kind of see what we were really working with.
Well, Huey, that is a great explanation of just how pervasive this problem was in your neighborhood. And we actually have some pictures that we're sharing with the audience right now that are actually very recent. And these were all taken in the last several months. You probably, I can recognize some of these piles and the pictures that you've taken. And I understand that, you know, your neighborhood really had some significant Harvey impacts, thousands of houses flooded. And because of the open ditch draining, one of the things we talked about was, you know, how this illegal dumping may have contributed to exacerbating the flooding that was going on in your area, as well as creating problems with mosquitoes and public health issues that really did raise it to an environmental problem and a civil rights issue, right? Because this was a community that we identified if, you know, fits certain demographic criteria, as well as being a lower income community, socially vulnerable, and really made a civil rights case out of it, and preparing the written complaint that we mentioned around this and the other issues that your neighborhood was facing. We also, just so people know, we validated the on the ground story that Huey and the residents in her neighborhood were living, and got data directly from 311 that showed disproportionate response times from the city to illegal dumping reports that city that Huey and her community had made to the city to get these things picked up and addressed, and they just were going unattended. You know, you talked a little bit about, before filing the complaint and engaging with the city, you know, you said you got a little traction, but can you explain a little bit of the frustration you had and not having these issues addressed?
Well, on the micro, it's very demeaning for your community to see that much garbage that piles up everywhere. We could not get any intel from the city or the railroad, because a lot of our area is covered by the railroad. And so we had meetings with the railroad and the city and the county to address the drainage concerns that were identified to be caused by illegal dumping, and the fact that the culverts were too small or collapsed in various areas. And that no matter what you do, if you've got, we've probably cataloged somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 15 sofas, mattresses, and everything else that a person could have in their house dumped in one location. And so water cannot flow through that. Trees where, you know, they've deforested a whole lot and put it on the curb, and there's no way to get that water can flow through all of that. So we had worked with the city, worked with various groups trying to figure out how best to tackle it. But from the community level, that's a pretty hard task. And so, Amy, the trust that the community had in getting anything done had long ago diminished. They didn't believe that calling 311 and reporting to 311 would work. And I think, you know, we started out with that. We started out trying to prove to our community that they could call 311 and get results, only to find out that we couldn't. And so since we couldn't do that, our CIP dollars were much lower than they were in other areas, because we weren't coming up with the projects. And so that was the high level thing that was happening, is the funding that was required for solid waste to have enough trucks, for us to have enough additional pickup days to pick this stuff up. All of that went under CIP money, and we just couldn't get it because the reporting was so off. And nobody really believed that we had more illegal dumping than anywhere else. Every community thinks they have more illegal dumping until you actually put pen to paper and identify your illegal dumping. And we found that once we did that and could pull those reports, it was easy enough to prove.
Yeah, and so because of that and what was outlined in the complaint and y'all's clear advocacy to the city around this issue for so many years, we got the exciting news that last summer that the Department of Justice had decided to investigate the city of Houston's actions around illegal dumping. It includes 4 city departments. That was largely based on the complaint that your group had filed with the assistance of Legal Aid. What was your reaction to that news? And can you share a little bit about how the investigation has progressed since last summer?
Well, it was rather shocking because I don't think any of us saw that it could possibly be a civil rights violation. Looking back on it, I guess we should have been able to see it. But again, we're looking in the weeds and trying to figure out this illegal dumping thing. And as we put it together, it lends itself to being a civil rights complaint. The first thing that happened was we noticed that all our illegal dumping was gone suddenly. And so the day that Amy actually notified us that it was coming out in the news, for a week or so, we had been noticing that our illegal dumping was gone, like mysteriously it was missing. And once they said the DOJ was coming in, we realized that the city had done the grandma's coming to visit, we've got to clean up kind of deal. So they cleaned up all our illegal dumping. And when I say all, I mean places that we have been reporting that were near seniors and churches and daycares, places that we have reported over and over and over again that had car parts and boats. Anything that could be labeled as illegal dumping possibly was removed from the most remote locations. And so the Department of Justice comes in and we probably did, I don't know, 20 or so interviews where we couldn't find illegal dumping to even show people. It was tricky because it didn't exist anymore. And then that went on for about a month or two, that every week somebody from solid waste or one of their contractors was picking up.
Back on mute.
In the community, it was just gone. But by the end of September, we were back to normal and having to report our illegal dumping and figure it out. But by then, the Department of Justice had come in. They were on the ground, walking with us and interviewing and looking at all of the illegal dumping that had reappeared because the city wasn't investing the kind of money they had been investing in getting it picked up. So that went on. I think the last time we actually walked with them was maybe January, but we are constantly in contact with them because they want to know that what are we doing? Are we continuing our 311 push? Are we getting results? Well, up until 2 months ago, 311 still didn't work because the 311 system had, the city had taken it down and put it back up, and now it works. I've used it and I'm able to report to 311, but it'll be a while. I mean, we lost 2 years of data. So we don't know what damage that will have done to our, what we've been requesting. And so we still are in this trying to see what the results will be in terms of the DOJ, but they seem to have had some pretty remarkable transformation in the city. They created some transformations in the city for the way they react to the things that we need. And we're not hearing the same old song and dance about there's just no funding to come out and pick up what you need to have picked up. So it's pretty much a wait and see. And then the mayor launched the One Clean Houston initiative that will clean up all of Houston, from what we've been told. And so we're just trying to figure out how that's going to work on 100 tires in one place, because are they being recycled? Are they being picked up? Are they putting systems in place that will help us to identify illegal dumping, identify who the dumpers are? Because that's the kind of thing we need, is for the city to identify those people and penalize them for dumping in our community. So that is my ask at this point, and that's what we're waiting to see how that plays out. But One Clean Houston seems like a good plan. There are just a couple of things that we'd like to see tweaked and want to know how it's going to impact us.
Great. Well, Brian, you had a chance to tag along on the visit when the DOJ came to see the site and kind of experience firsthand going through the neighborhood. Do you want to share some of those experiences and just kind of what your observations have been from interning with our team this semester?
Definitely. So when the DOJ came out, they were seeing everything for the first time, and I was seeing it for the first time as well. So I had a similar experience to them in that this was the first time we had traveled to this neighborhood and got to see the illegal dumping issue. And the first thing that struck me was just the sheer volume of illegal dumping that had occurred. It was just every other street had just giant illegal dump sites. And when I had drove to the site, I was coming from about southeast Houston. And so I got to see sort of another interesting perspective that none of the communities that I saw along the way seemed to have this problem in the same way that Super Neighborhood 48 did. It was pretty egregious. Another thing that struck me was the content of the dumps. I guess maybe I had assumed from the get-go that it was just going to be construction type waste. That maybe, the community was undergoing some kind of growth. Certainly it couldn't be as bad as everything that I was reading, but the content of these respective sites really sort of showed that that wasn't the case. It was more systemic than that. Sometimes it was yard waste, other times it was heavy trash. And I think that's indicative of the disconnect that's between the community and the city, and that a lot of the times there's just a lack of information that the community has about how to properly dispose of these materials in the first place, whether it's construction, medical waste, home items. So it was an eye-opening visit, and it did give me, I think, a unique perspective on One Clean Houston and how I think that's going to go.
Yeah, so both of y'all have mentioned One Clean Houston. Do you want to speak a little bit about this new announcement that the city just came out with and in response to the DOJ investigation last month and kind of their commitment to pledge $18 million towards helping solve this problem for communities like Huey's and also citywide?
Sure. So I was very excited when I heard the announcement. The city of Houston, me and Amy were in close contact at that point. And when we had heard that $18 million was going into this program, it was very exciting to hear that our work had produced this kind of a result. And, admittedly, it's as big a dollar value as 18 million is. When you parse through it, there are certainly some interesting aspects. The vast majority of One Clean Houston, the dollar amount seems to be focused on cleanup, and that's sort of perfectly lines up with Huey's anecdotal experience. There was a sudden rush of cleanup into the community that explains the contracting that the city of Houston got done immediately to start to get some of the illegally dumped materials out there. There's arguably a little bit less in enforcement and in education. So that's some area where I think Lone Star may seek some improvement on behalf of our communities, and as well as a little bit more specificity. But all in all, we're really excited to see this program roll out. And as Huey had said, it's just kind of a wait and see game to see if implementation is going to come through in the way that we all hope and want it to.
Great, and we've included some links on the slide to the city's One Clean Houston plan, which includes a full website that has a description of the plan, as well as a 8-page strategic plan that gives the high points of it. So we encourage people to go check that out and see if you think it will be sufficient to try to address this problem in Huey's neighborhood or even your own. And because it's Earth Day, we thought it would be fun to issue kind of an Earth Day challenge for those, watching this thing and saying, well, how can I help? How can I help communities like Huey that see these big piles of trash? I see trash driving around Houston. And so I'm going to have Ryan give you some suggestions on how you can report illegal dumping.
Definitely. So the 311 system is still the primary method of reporting non-emergencies in the city of Houston, like illegal dumping. part of One Clean Houston was the Rat on a Rat hotline that the city is really proud of. That's more for actually reporting dumping as it's happening, trying to find out who these bad actors are. And that's obviously essential. I mean, the law enforcement officers can't be everywhere all at once. So it really takes a whole community effort to prevent illegal dumping, to get some of these bad actors to feel the effects of what they're doing. You know, even if it's just a fine, they in some way will be deterred from doing this again, so that we don't have the flooding issues and the health issues that Super Neighborhood 48 has had to experience. Crime Stoppers also another important tool. You can get extra money from reporting some of these bad actors. I think a little bit more macro as far for Earth Day is you can always volunteer in your community. I know Huey does tire roundups and cleanups in Super Neighborhood 48 and Trinity Gardens. That's something I do in my own neck of the woods, is try to go around and clean up trash along the rivers and streams. That's always worth doing. And on Earth Day and every other day of the year, it's so essential. And you can help out Lone Star Legal Aid too. And we do a lot of environmental justice type work and community engagement efforts. And you know, should anyone out there watching feel that their neighborhood or community is disadvantaged in some way, perhaps they've been neglected, you know, you can come out and help Lone Star Legal Aid with a lot of our various projects. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our partners at the DOJ as well. Their information is on the slide to report violations to them.
Yeah, and that's part of any reporting for the civil rights investigation that's ongoing. If you want to let them know about particular problems in your neighborhood across the city, there's both a hotline and an email that's set up to receive pictures or other comments they have for the investigation team. All right, well, thank y'all both so much for sharing some great tips on how to help address illegal dumping now that the city's new plan has rolled out. And Huey, I want to toss it back to you for some final thoughts. Anything else you'd like our audience to know today about illegal dumping, and maybe, or how people could make a difference in their community like you have, and moving the city or forward to engage on illegal dumping and commit more resources to this problem?
Well, thank you so much, Amy, and thank you, Ryan. I think the audience probably has some pretty unique ideas on what we can do different about illegal dumping. And that's been my push for a long time, is to make sure that we invite ideas that give us new ways to handle debris. You know, we talk recycling, we talk all of these things, and we actually have recycling exhibits going at our schools at different times. But if you've got ideas about that, please reach out to us, because we're open to getting this issue resolved, and not just, you know, $18 million is a pretty hefty bandage. But we'd like to see at the end of this that we have solutions in place that keep us from experiencing this over and over again. But I really appreciate Lone Star Legal Aid more than I can tell anybody, and the Department of Justice on helping us to highlight this issue in our community and hopefully bring us some resolution. And happy Earth Day to everybody.
Yeah, happy Earth Day, everyone. I don't know if we have any questions in the chat or anything on Facebook that we need to address. I can't see that right now, but if you do have questions, we will try to get back to you with some responses, either for Huey and or Lone Star generally. And as Huey mentioned, we're always looking for good ideas. We're still in direct communication with the Department of Justice and trying to wrap up its investigation and come up with creative solutions on how to solve this problem long term. So thank y'all both for participating today, and we wish everybody a happy Earth Day. Think about what you can do to make your area of the world a little cleaner this weekend.
Thank you.